I have returned with another origin story. I was so excited to read this. I was gonna go through more middle grade things, but I had to read this book again. I love this book. This is my original copy that I've had since fourth or fifth grade. You can see it's been read many times. The spine is pretty cracked, but it's still in good shape-ish. So, Crown Duel and Court Duel, this is a, like, omnibus volume, I guess you would say, from Sherwood Smith. And it was definitely, I've read it multiple times throughout my life. And this is the first time I've read it in about 10 years, actually. So it was really fun to revisit. It is a kind of YA fantasy romance, light on the fantasy. It is in kind of a medieval world, and the magic is just pretty minimal. It's a side character in this book. Anyway, for Crown Duel, the first one, I'll just give a little synopsis of both. Crown Duel is about Meliara of Tlanthe and her brother Bernaric. Their father passes away right at the beginning. And he was already preparing to go to war with their king in the kingdom that they're in. Their father dies right at the beginning, and he was already preparing. He had mercenaries hired and everything to go to war with the king of the kingdom. He didn't believe in anything the king was doing. He felt he was a tyrant, etc. So now his children are left to carry this out, and they've already sent a letter to the king and the court. So the intent has been declared that they are going to war. And their father passes away, and it's like, bye, here you go. You deal with this. Their little county, because Meliara and Bernaric are sharing the title of Count and Countess, instead of just letting it pass to Bernaric, because he doesn't want to do this by himself. He wants his sister's help. In their county, they go on the offensive, they go on the defensive against the king's forces, who pretty quickly come right to their land, and the king also wants to harvest their color woods. And the color woods are where the magical hill folk live. And the hill folk almost never really appear in this story. They're kind of a device to move this plot along. But the color woods are special. They're the only country in this entire world that has them. And the people of this country, of this kingdom, have a covenant with the hill folk where they only use what they need of the woods, and so they've never exported it to other countries, but now the king and his cousin are pretty much planning to do that. So that's another side reason why they're defending their land, not just that the king is a tyrant. So the king's cousin comes, and he begins a war with the county of Tlanthe, and Bernaric and Meliara and their people, who are not trained soldiers at all, start a guerrilla campaign, pretty much. They're using, like, what they called itchwort, which is a powder that makes everybody itch, and they're like diverting streams and freezing pathways in their land because they know it better than the people that are coming in for it. And then they start having to get more front line, I guess you would say, because one of the other covenants of war is that they will never use arrows, which is a very interesting thing for a community to decide together. But they're never going to use arrows, but this guy comes and brings arrows against them. So they start laying traps, and they haven't used animal traps, in a long time either, because they didn't want the hill folk to be trapped in them. And this is how Meliara, she goes by Mel, gets trapped in one of their animal traps while she's out scouting one night. And this puts her directly in the hands of the enemy, where she meets the Marquis de Chevreth of Chevreth. Vidanrek is what he ends up his name. So the Marquis starts to take her back to the city, and she has to escape. She isn't able to at first because the wound is so bad, but she does end up in front of the king, put in the cells, and then her spy that she was there with, or her spy that she had in the city giving her information while they were trying to do their war, he comes to her and is able to get her out. And she goes on for pretty much the rest of the book a cross-kingdom trip with her injured leg, trying to get back to her family. And the Marquis is chasing her the whole time. As this is happening, she starts getting the idea that maybe the Marquis is actually trying to help her. And, like, he sees her directly while she's hiding in a village and doesn't say anything. And all these other odd moments. He had also let her know at one point, he does reveal that he is working against the king too, but Mel doesn't want anything to do with that. She wants to go back home to her brother. She stupidly decides to steal a pie directly from the duke that had been fighting against her before. She finds him at an inn when she's pretty close to home, and she decides, you know what, this has been a hard journey and I'm really hungry, I'm going to steal this, and then she rides off on his horse, which is hilarious, but she gets caught because she does that. And the Duke takes her to the nearest fortress where the Marquis shows up and saves her. She gets saved all the time. Incredibly. Anyway, so the Marquis finally reveals himself as a traitor to the king as well, frees Mel, and then immediately goes to war against the king, kind of on behalf of Slanth, and they kill the king at the end of the book. Spoilers. There's a lot of spoilers here, but we gotta get to the second one too. It's not really about the battle at all. It's all about Mel's cross-kingdom journey. So it kind of is a little abrupt that the king just dies suddenly in a chapter, and there's not really anything else about the warfare building up to that. But it was fine to me. I was more interested in what was going on with Mel. And this book is also revealing to Mel, because she grew up with her father telling her all the time he never went to court because he felt like all the court people were fake. And so she believes that as well, until she meets the Marquis and starts seeing that maybe he's not as superficial as she was led to believe. So she's also confronting her own prejudices, that she went to war for a specific reason, thinking that these people are all stupid and shouldn't be running the country, and that she and Bran could do a better job because they actually look out for their people. And she knows nothing about the court life at all. So she's kind of realizing how ignorant she is throughout this book, and that she did grow up in a very closed-off, sheltered place, and there's more to the world. Not necessarily that she's wrong, but that she was very idealistic and didn't know what real life is like, or life not in her part of the world is like. So that was book one. And then we have Court Duel, and we go from the guerrilla warfare and the running across the country to the duels in court. Is now the Marquis is installing himself as king, and Mel stays up in County Tlanth because she doesn't want to face all of her embarrassments during the war, and she feels like she lost because she and her brother realized that they didn't know everything, and she stays up there until her brother comes and visits and says, oh, by the way, I have a fiance. And so Mel has to go to court now, and she starts getting to know the Marquis better, but also still avoids him because he embarrasses her. And you start getting this really slow burn kind of thing going on where they're barely in any scenes together, but she thinks about him a lot, and he really impacts what she's doing day to day. But she's also trying to learn all of court intrigue, and these are the things that she hated, that she was already warned about by her father. So now she's actually experiencing it, and she's learning the fan language. It's really freaking cool that it's the subtext, the in between the lines that people are showing with their fans. Like, no, I'm actually being sarcastic when I say this kinds of things. And so she's trying to catch up on all of that she never learned because her father kept her up in the mountains. And at the same time, she's also, for the first time, experiencing courtship. There's a few of the court men that kind of flirt with her a bit, and she doesn't know what to do about that. So she got a random gift at one point on her name day, her birthday, and she didn't know who it came from. She thought it was one of her flirts. And so she tries to send a letter back that way to try and get advice through the servants. She has her servant be like, hey, can you just send this back to whomever it was? I don't know who it's going to, but we're going to use that path. And I'm going to send a letter. And she starts a courtship over letter, not knowing who this is. She's just asking for advice at first on how to deal with court and get through the, like, court warfare that's so different than what she just dealt with out in the world of, like, with swords. And so she also starts to fall in love with this person that she's writing to, which it's really cute how that's going. So that's pretty much that part. And then they do find out that some of the rest of the king's family were also trying to get the throne back. And so there is a little bit of fighting at the end where we have to confront that to keep the kingdom from falling back into the not so nice people's hands. And that's the gist of that. I guess, do I tell you? I don't know. So here's the big spoiler, because I've got to tell you, because I got to be able to say a few of my favorite scenes. The big spoiler is that the Marquis that's installing himself as the king, that she's still uncomfortable being around in person, is the person that she was doing the courtship by letter with. She's her unknown, if she calls him the unknown, or my unknown, I don't know, I don't remember exactly. But he is that person, and they end up together happily ever after. It's kind of a light romantasy in a way, before romantasy was a thing. This came out in 2002, so this is 3rd or 4th grade for me. And I remembered almost all of this because I've read it so many times growing up. Anyway, I guess I'll give you a couple of my favorite scenes, which are from the Court Duel side. Sometimes I would only reread Court Duel because I loved it so much with the court intrigue and the actual, like, slow burn romance that was going on. This time I did read both, I promise. I reread Crown Duel as well. So my favorite scenes they're kind of linked together. At one point, Mel and the Marquis have a horse race to an inn, and he wagers her a kiss, and that's what he would want to collect if he wins. And she loses, and she comes in, and it had been pouring down rain. It rains a lot in this story. It had been pouring down rain, and she comes in, and she's like, okay, I'm just gonna give you the kiss. She's kind of a sore loser about it. But he's like, I'm not gonna kiss a wet fish. Are you kidding me? I'm gonna save this. And I know what happens, so it was really funny reading this again, knowing that, and kind of seeing the Marquis putting that in his back pocket, knowing that Mel doesn't like him right now, and he wants to save the kiss for a time that he thinks she will receive it better. And you can kind of see that he's already trying to twist this stuff. The next part is when he reveals himself. Now, Mel had a ring made for her unknown because he sent her a ring initially, and that's how she established the relationship with him. So she sent her own ring to him. And when the latest group of the king's family tries to take over the court again, she runs when she gets this information from her spy, who's still working for her, uh, to try to catch up to him, and because he's gone off somewhere and she's trying to catch up with him to give him all the information so that he can be prepared for another war. And she gets to the inn, another inn, and sit down, and he's kind of wary of her at first because he's like, how do you have this information? So at first he thinks, I'm not sure about you, but then he twists something on his finger under his gloves so you can't see it. And then they go and they deal with the family, and they come to another inn. So many inns. And they sit down again, and this time Mel is like, hey, I'm sorry. I've made a lot of mistakes with you and I've always just been so rude to you, but I didn't know how to be friends with you after everything that we went through in book one together. And he kind of interrupts her, and he's like, well, this is one of my more spectacular mistakes. And he starts pulling off his gloves, and then she sees the ring, and she's like, oh no, I did not sign up for this. And she starts to leave, but he grabs her. And that's when he cashes in on his kiss. And that's when she finally reconciles that she did actually like him as a person. She just didn't want to admit it. And she's fine with him being her unknown. And it was just so cute. And he tells her, too, that he was so afraid because one time she went to the library archives and he was there writing a letter. And she was like looking for something specific and asked for it, and he pointed her to it, and he tells her that he was so afraid because he was writing one of his letters to her when she stumbled across him in that. And it was so cute and adorable. Anyway, that's the main gist of it for both books. Book one is about Mel understanding that she has prejudice and that she's kind of ignorant. And book two is Mel learning to navigate a new world, essentially, a new dynamic that she had prejudices against, while also protecting herself from the people that kind of reinforce that there is a reason to be afraid. I'll talk a little bit about the world, because the world building is pretty light. Like, there is established culture here. They use they kneel on pillows a lot for eating, but they also use tables at certain points. They have very specific dress codes and such, and then the fan language, and they use fire sticks as well that the hill folk provide the whole kingdom with, that are magical sticks that keep places warm. But the fire sticks don't really come up again after the first book. Like, at the beginning, they're worried about how many fire sticks they have and lasting through the winter, especially through a war. And then it doesn't really come up again. And then there's the hill folk as well that are hardly in it. So they kind of just come up as a reason to defend their county. And then again, at the end of book two, Mel goes to defend the hill folk again. And they come and help with one final skirmish, and then they disappear. And that's all you know about the hill folk. Nobody even really knows about them. They even think that Mel is the only one who knows about the hill folk because she lived amongst them up in the hills. But she's like, nobody knows the hill folk. So they're kind of more of a fairy tale to even them in the book. So, but other than that, you don't get too much world going on. It's mostly about the people in this. Also, with magic. So we have, again, the hill folk and the fire sticks, but there's like one court in a different kingdom that produces mages, and they have a group that will allow you to learn to be a mage if they accept you. But there's no mages really in the kingdom that they live in, except for one person, which you'll have to read to find out about that. And that's pretty much all the magic there is. That there's a mage that can do some illusion magic, and you know that there's mages that can do other things in a different kingdom, but that's about it. It's also, about the world again. It's also very interesting that it follows European history a little bit, and that they get introduced to coffee and chocolate So that was just funny that we're in this totally made up world and then they're talking about how exciting it is that they're getting coffee and chocolate from a different kingdom. Another interesting thing about the world is there's no religion. They don't say my god or my gods. They say life and burn it. And so that was interesting because I've never really read fantasy that doesn't have some sort of religion in it. And then they don't seem to have any preoccupation with gender roles. There's women in the armies, and anytime a man is alone with a woman in a room, nobody freaks out about that, and nothing of that sort. But they are courting each other throughout, and it seems like heirs. Okay, I don't remember what I was saying, but my camera overheated because it's 80 degrees in my house, and I had to turn that on. But I'm going to try to do this quickly before it overheats again, and I'm also really low on battery. So anyway, the last couple things I had was I have a personal theory based on some of the things that were said. There's a character named Flavik who's part of the former king's family, and he's a bad person. I won't say too much more about that, but he drops some little comments that are almost direct quotes from some of the letters that Mel was writing to her unknown. And I kind of think that he knew about them because they talk about how letters get intercepted in the palace all the time and that everybody's spying on everybody with the court intrigue. So I just think that Flavik knew about that. I'm not sure he knew who she was writing to, but he knew that she was writing to somebody and getting advice about how to deal with the families in the court. Because he even says at one point, I wish you'd had a better tutor. It's like, okay, Flavik. This book is also written in first person. It's written like the memoirs of the queens in the archive that Mel visits a lot. So if that gives you a hint as to where Mel ends up, she becomes queen of the realm, marrying Vidanric. She's leaving this to other people to read in the future, and also is like, this could be my great-grandchildren reading this, she even says at one point. So it's pretty neat to think of this as a book in the library of this kingdom. And then, because this was an omnibus edition of the first two books, written later, there is a special little short story, Vidanric's birthday surprise, that's in there. It's really cute after they're together. There's also multiple books in this same world that Sherwood Smith wrote, but I never read them as a kid. I've heard Inda is really good, and it's the first in a 4-book series, I believe. So I might pick those up because I love this book so much just to read them now. It's also really interesting to think about this as a YA book of the time because the vocabulary is definitely where you would think of like adult literary novels might be right today. You can definitely see a difference in what was written YA in even the early 2000s to what's written YA as today, just how our language has changed. So I really enjoyed this once again, and I hope somebody else picks this up. If you've read this, because it's been out for so long, if you read this, if you grew up with this and enjoyed it as much as I did, please let me know. If you picked this up because of this and enjoy it, let me know. Like I said again, this copy is well loved, and I will probably read it again in a few years. But please go read Crown Duel and Court Duel, Sherwood Smith, and I will catch you next time.